Carlin, and for the past 9 years, I've been working with Indigenous youth and communities across Canada. In schools, community halls, and remote areas with one clear goal: to help improve lives and create a better future. This podcast is about real stories about resilience and what it takes to overcome adversity and achieve success. Through my work with educators, leaders, and athletes, I've seen what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change. That's what we'll be talking about here. Each episode, we'll be sitting down with people who have taken different paths to success, who face real challenges, and who have something meaningful to pass on to others. This isn't about hype. It's about truth, impact, and believing in what's possible. Welcome to the See and Believe podcast. Welcome to episode 4 of the See and Believe podcast. Today's guest is none other than Richard Mirasty. So this is one that a lot of people have been waiting to see, including myself. So Richard has an amazing story of making it from the main streets of Green Lake and Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan, overcoming a lot of obstacles in his childhood, but fighting through all that and eventually becoming a successful, well-known lawyer in Alberta, Edmonton specifically, and in northern Alberta, of which he still does today, helping Indigenous people. So this is a good one that you want to miss. Check it out. All right. Well, I've been looking forward to this, I got to say, for since I started the podcast, and obviously with all of my time with you, I've heard a lot of this stuff, but it's really falls in line of why I'm doing the podcast, and stories of Indigenous people that have gone through hardship and achieved success, and can be an example to First Nations and Indigenous kids. So this is a perfect story. So welcome, Richard Mirasty. So
Thank you.
the original.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So let's go back to the beginning, obviously. So you were raised by your grandmother in Green Lake. So paint us a picture of your early childhood memories going back as far as you can remember of that experience. And you can go on as long as you want about that.
Okay. Well, much of my earliest memories are when I was a child living with my grandmother in Sled Lake and then Green Lake later. But go back, I was born in the town of Big River to a 17-year-old girl from Sled Lake, which is not that far away. And my father was a local hockey player, and who I've never really met, and he's passed away since then. But I was taken from the hospital at 7 days old by the welfare. I was scooped and placed into a foster home in near Prince Albert. And then my 19-year-old aunt wrote to my grandfather and said, my grandfather was across Sled Lake in a trap line because I was born in January, and said, "This is your first grandchild. You don't give grandchildren away like puppies." So my old grandfather wrote back and said, "See if you can get him back." And that began a process for trying to get me back. And I was what you call a 50s scoop, not a 60s scoop. So I'm dating myself. But
yeah, I didn't even know that's the first time I heard this. So great.
Oh, I was in foster care for the first 3 months of my life.
Okay.
And then they got me back in March, end of March. My mother and my 17-year-old mother and my aunt went to Prince Albert by the old bus Saskatchewan Transportation Company and picked me up from the welfare office and brought me home. I was 3 months old. And then we mostly lived in Sled Lake after that until I was about 3. So I don't have much memories of that, obviously, because I was a child. But I do remember like 3 years old. I remember riding 3 or 4 years old, riding in a sled with a sleigh with my grandfather with a team of horses, not a team of horses, but a horse called Champ. I remember that.
Wow.
But when I was 3 or 4, we moved to Green Lake, my grandma and I, and moved to close to a school, and I think the relationship had kind of run its course. My grandfather and grandma, I mean, they still maintained a closeness because I used to see my grandfather all the time, and I called my grandparents mom and dad. I still do.
Yes.
My mother, my biological mother, moved away soon she turned 18 in June, and I never knew she was my mom until I was 9. I thought she was my sister, and my aunt Victoria told me that's your mom, that's not your sister.
Hmm.
So that was a bit of a shock when you're 9 years old.
No kidding.
Uh, yeah, and then I met my mom for the first time when I was 12. She came to Green Lake with her 3 kids, and she didn't, my grandma just spoke Cree, so I only spoke Cree until I started school. And our first house in Green Lake was a log cabin and attached to a granary, like it was just makeshift housing. And every fall, my grandma and I used to have to cake the sides of the log cabin, and that was attached. Our sleeping quarters were in the granary, and our kitchen was in the front, and it had a dirt floor. That was our first house till I was about 8, and then we got welfare housing on the other side of town and near the school and near the church. So that's kind of how I grew up. Poor grandma on welfare, didn't speak English, but just a tremendous. I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything. She was the best.
What
So,
do you remember about the winters?
oh shit,
I
the
mean, like,
winters were so
tell us a
cold. The
little about
slop.
that, and the wood. Who got the wood?
Well, we would get wood from a guy named Norbert Mirasty. Skus, they called him, as a little guy. He was my grandfather's first cousin. So he would haul wood for the local people that didn't have horses, and I think we paid $6 a load. And I go help him, and then of course, it would if he would cut it himself, he would charge $2 more, and we couldn't afford it. So it was
Right.
$8. So we just have the long logs, and me and my grandma would saw the wood outside. We had a well probably 400 meters away. The well often froze, so you'd have to melt snow to pour it down the spout. So you could.
Right.
So those are the sorts of things I remember. And our house was so cold. Like I say, the slop pail would freeze over. But in the morning, my grandma would get up and make a little make a fire in the heater in the middle. We had an airtight heater,
Yeah.
and in the cook stove, she would open the oven and put my clothes in there, like
Yeah.
just warm that up, and then she'd say, "Okay, Ricky, one ska." She called me Ricky. One
Yeah.
ska means get up.
Yeah.
So that's she just doted over me,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't, like I say, I wouldn't trade anything for that. How she treated me. She wanted me to finish school, and that's what ultimately what happened.
Yeah.
So
Well, should be definitely should be proud of you. So let's go on from there. Actually, no. There was What year did you get sent off to Alacross? How old were you?
I was 13.
Okay.
I was 13 in the fall. I mean, it would be the fall of '69 or something like that. I was 13 years old. The priest and the nuns said, he's got potential. He needs to get more discipline, though. He's starting to drink, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My grandma agreed to send me away, so I went to Isle Cross, and I thought, oh, this is good because I had people that I knew from Isle Cross from running track up there. I used to run track up there,
Hmm.
Buffalo Narrows. So I thought, well, I got new friends. So I was a boarder at the Isle Cross Residential School for approximately 2.5 months. I went up there, and the novelty wore off after about a month. I wanted to go home back to my grandmother. but
The
so, but
novelty of residential school. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, oh,
Uh,
I didn't know you were there that long. So,
2 months, yeah, yeah, 2 months because basically what happened was. In the morning we'd get up and go to mass,
hmm,
then stop for breakfast, go pick up our books and go to school and we had it's a huge dorm with probably 50, 75 kids, double
yeah,
double bunked. Yeah, that was our living quarters, and that was our routine. Mass, uh, eat, go to school. And I was there in the fall. They had an outdoor rink. I was looking forward to that, but I never made it that far. I left about end of October before it got really cold.
so tell us about the escape night.
Oh, okay. Well, what happened was I got a strap for no reason,
Yeah.
and I was also homesick. I mean, I could survive a strap because I got a few in Green Lake. Um, so what happened was I was homesick for my grandma.
Yeah.
Uh, so I got the strap. So I planned my getaway, the routine. I knew the routine. We'd go to mass and then we come back after breakfast and get, kind of dawdle around until before the first bell, and the school wasn't far away. But what I did is I packed my duffel bag the night before and put it under my, I had a bottom bunk because I was an older kid. I was 13. Um, and then in the morning, when everybody left for school, I went into the washroom and hid. It was a public washroom at one end of the dorm, and I put my feet up in case anybody was checking. So I was kind of resourceful.
Yeah.
And then when it was quiet, I grabbed my duffel bag and we headed west to the west of Isla Village, where the Hudson Bay was. And I knew that weight fisheries trucks from Big River came there. I think Tuesdays and Thursdays they drive by Green Lake and go back up the same day. So I walked over to the Hudson Bay, and the guy was just finished unloading. And I said, "You going to Green Lake?" And he said, "Yeah. Can I get a ride? Jump in." So I was in Green Lake before they knew I was gone. And I walked into my grandma's house. She was like, in Cree, "What are you
Yeah.
doing here? Come sit now. We'll get in trouble. And you have to go back." And I said, "No, I'm just going to run away again." So
That's
she
not
said,
happening.
"Okay."
That's
So
a
she
hard
said,
no.
"Well, yeah." She said to me, "Well, you're not staying home. Go to school and go register in the school."
Yeah.
So, because she didn't speak English, so and the school was about 500 meters away. So I went to the school, and recess time. My buddies are, "What are you doing here?" So because they knew I was gone, and I registered, and then and I finished school. That was grade 8,
Yeah.
grade 9 the next year, and the next year they sent me away again to
Yeah.
Wilcox in Notre Dame and down by Regina,
So
by
just
Moose Jaw.
explain that situation. Why are some of your buddies allowed to stay and then they wanted to ship you out?
Well, I don't know. I think they thought I was at a risk, of getting. See, a lot
Who's
of my
they?
buddies, and I'm not judging my buddies because
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story. But every one of my buddies were, I think I grew up with, ended up in PA Correctional Center. Most of them.
Hmm.
Um, it's like a rite of passage when you're 15 or 16 years old. The Silver Bird would come to Meadow Lake, Beauval, Isle Cross, Buffalo, and pick up people, young guys, going to jail.
Yeah.
And that's like a rite of passage. Um, and one of the things that happened to me when I was in grade 8 is I got we had a principal there who was very hard nosed, and I have a cousin who was in and out of trouble, and then I hung around with him, and he passed away now. But my principal said to me one day, he was choked the heck out of me, and
Yeah.
so I pushed back, and then he said, "Go wait in my office." And we were both in detention, my buddy and I, he said to me, "He's going to end up in jail soon, and so will you if you keep hanging around with him and keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
And so that kind of jogged my head a little bit. And sure enough, my cousin went to jail within a few months because he turned 16.
Yeah.
And so that kind of, I just had a sense of right or wrong. People would say, "Let's go we'd be out in Green Lake. Let's go break into Sharpies." Sharpies was a fishing tackle business.
Yeah.
And I go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and then the next morning, the police would arrive at the school. But I wasn't there, so I didn't
Yeah.
do any of this stuff. So I never got in trouble.
Well, thank God that
I-
principal said that to you to stick that in your head. Made you think,
yeah,
right?
well, I later had a beer with him, and he's passed away
Yeah.
at the King George in Saskatoon. I had a beer with him. I was actually going to school in Saskatoon, and he said, "I was hard on you, but I knew you had some potential, and I didn't want you to go to the so." And so one of the people that looked after me, I guess he was mean to me, and I resented it for the longest time. But when you think back,
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
No doubt. It's
So
funny, just changing gears a little bit. I was talking to one of my buddies from Poundmaker, and he said, "Carlin, how's it going? I want to come in and go to the King George." I said, "The King George?" He goes, "Yeah," when he's obviously First Nations. And he said, "Yeah, that's where
yeah,
we all used to go when we were going to university in Saskatoon."
the KG, the
Yeah, the
KG.
KG. I don't even remember where it was. Where was it?
It was, the right down the downtown. There's a crosswalk where you go crossways sideways. There's a drugstore close by. It's right downtown. I'm not sure if it's 20th or not 20th, but it's an avenue.
Yeah.
and so it's right downtown.
Okay. That's so
And
that's
it's probably torn down.
yeah, it's
The
gone
bay used
now.
the bay used to be down there in that
Oh
area.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember where it was.
There was a crosswalk where you could cross any way you wanted, cross. So, and
Yeah.
there was yeah,
Okay, so moving on. You got into your teen years and you were known as one of the toughest competitors around. You were in sports, but you were also that's when you were starting to fight, and hence the names came from Nasty Mirasty. Um, but tell us a little bit about going into your teen years and what you remember about that and how that played out.
Well, see, when I was 14, 15, I finished grade 9.
Yeah.
I had to catch a bus every morning to Green Lake. There was only 5 of us that from grade 9 we had a class of 30. The rest dropped out. 5 of us went by bus to Green Lake every morning, and then we'd come back every night. It was always dark when we got back because Saskatchewan doesn't change your time zones.
Yeah.
But very early in my grade 10 year, I wanted to play football. I was, so I tried out for the football team, but of course the bus left at 4:30, so football practice would be at 4 o'clock. My late gym teacher and football coach, Ron Dosdall, I spoke at his funeral, but he was our coach. So there were 3 grade 10s that made the team, and all of them are Ricks. Late Rick Green was a great hockey player, but he died of rabies. A bat bit him when he was like 16. And
Jeez.
Rick Arnold, who I still associate with, he works at one of the Ford dealerships, head mechanic in Meadow Lake, and he played hockey and grew up. He was kind of my best friend growing up. He actually was the guy that gave me the nickname Nasty Mirasty when I was about 15 years old. We were
Oh
talking about
wow.
that.
Interesting
Yeah,
fact. Good to know.
yeah. When I was people ask sometimes, how did you come up with the name? I said I didn't come up with it. It was Rick Mirasty because we played hockey. I hadn't played much hockey, so I was a bit of a rough
Yeah.
skater. But I tried really hard and ran into everybody.
Right.
And yeah, so anyway, that's how I got the name. So then I ended up playing. We moved there. I played high school football, but every sport that I played in, I was ultra competitive. I must have got it from my late father, who had a reputation of who I've never met.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got that. It was something inherent. I would do anything to win. And so I got fight, whatever. I remember reading something about go to the net hard, and when you get there, arrive in a bad mood. So that's kind of that was
I
kind of my
like that.
attitude. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Okay,
So
so did sport did all of your activity in sport and all your times in sport as a teen, did that help you moving forward with everything else you've done?
yeah, like I would say, sports is a great equalizer.
Yeah.
You find a lot of Indigenous kids will excel in sports at when they're younger,
Yeah.
and then they get onto a higher level, more elite level. They tend to go home, give up. I mean, we all heard stories of really good, outstanding hockey players that will go south and then come home after a month or two. Uh, but sports has always been something. It's a great equalizer.
Yeah.
Like in the dressing room, everybody's equal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're all competing for the same thing. You're all trying to win, and it opens doors for you. Like when I was in high school, we were poor. But I ran track. I went to the provincial finals in track, and when I was 16, the Legion sent me to the Dundurn military camp just south of Saskatoon for a week-long track camp. We
Hmm.
couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it, but the Legion paid for it. The Meadow Lake Legion.
Yeah.
So they sent me away. Things like that happened. I played fastball for a town senior team. Because I was good in sports, I got a job working at the Meadow Lake Meat Market because they sponsored the ball team. And every Saturday, we'd take off south to go play ball, and I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
A little bit of money, but the people, the townspeople, the people on the team fed me, looked after me. So
Yeah.
it's just opened a lot of doors. And then when I moved to the city, same thing. I started hanging out in gyms, working out with guys that had played football. It always Sports has always been there for me. The open doors. So,
Okay, I want to talk about some of the people that helped you, and I know you do too. But let's go back a little bit. So you in your teens, getting into a little bit of trouble, fighting, whatnot. Life was probably not going down a good path for you. At what point do you decide that you needed to pivot and take a different path in your life?
Well, it was a process. I mean,
Yeah.
I knew right from wrong. I was raised right. My grandmother, I was an altar boy for 9 years, treat everybody equal, all that sort of stuff. But when I was about 16 or 17 years old, I started hanging around the bars in Meadow Lake as a bigger kid and fighting in bars. Um, and there was um, a corporal by the name of Sandy Mahan. He's now retired. He would patrol, do the patrols, and he'd see me in the stampede, and he'd see him know that I'm underage, and he'd go like this, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And he'd come over and said, "You're not supposed to be in here. Let's go." So I'd say, "Okay." So I'd say, "Okay, I'm driving you home." And I said, "No, I'm not going home." And he said, "Well, then I'll put you in cells." "Okay, I'll go home."
That's funny.
But he would talk to me on the way home. Is that you can sleep on the floor in the
Where
junk
was home
tank.
then?
Home in Green Lake or Meadow Lake,
Okay.
across the street from the hospital. So I moved there to go to high school, and I
Who were
was
you living
in
with
high
there?
school. Well, my grandma. My grandma
Okay.
was still alive.
Okay.
So we lived in a house, within probably a 10-minute walk from the high school, and I was
Yeah.
working in the meat market, but hanging around bars, and just the Meadow Lake's kind of a rough town, and um, anyway, he would lecture me on the way home and say, you have some future.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You can leave this town. You can do something with your life, but you're going on the wrong path. You're going to end up getting in trouble. And yeah. And I knew he was right, but when you're young and stupid,
Yeah.
ultimately, I graduated from high school. I was 18. My grandma came out of the hospital and came to my grad ceremony. She was wearing a coat that I bought her from my first paycheck at the meat shop, and it was the proudest moment of her life.
Yeah.
Um, but she died about 18 months later.
Mm-hmm.
I was barely 20 years old, so that left me alone because it was just the two of us. And so I was 20. So those years to 20 to 30, I always talk my dark years, and I minimized what in the years. But when I reflect back, I'm lucky I survived those years. So what happened after she died is I kind of fell apart, and I got into some trouble, and got thrown in jail in Meadow Lake. Went to court in the old courthouse in Meadow Lake, and the judge was the guy named Henry Goliath. And I actually just spoke about this at the law school on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The judge was named Henry Goliath. He was originally from Big River area. He said to me, and I was on probation. He said, "You're on probation and you're back,
Uh,
and I'm inclined to send you to jail." I'm saying, "Oh, no, I can't go to jail. I'm going to university in the fall." So he said to me, "Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a short, sharp sentence." Which means it's a term in criminal law. Short, sharp means just to teach you a lesson. Short, sharp sentence. So
yeah.
I'm going to sentence you to 4 months in the PA Correctional Center, and then so anyway, normally the cop would come over and put the handcuffs on you and stuff like that, and you'd go out the side door. Sandy, just give me one of these. Let's go. And
Yeah.
we walked to the police station like two friends, and um, he said, "Okay, you can use my phone to phone your girlfriend." But on the way there, he was telling me, "I told you this day was going to come.
Yeah.
I warned you, but don't let it define you." I'm paraphrasing what he told me, but don't
Yeah.
let this be the end of your story, and be like the others that just keep recycling in and out, in and out.
Yeah.
You can be better. So we got to the detachment in Meadow Lake, and he said, "Use my phone your girlfriend." So he knew I had a girlfriend
Yeah.
uh, for several years, and I phoned my girlfriend today. I'm going away on the Silver Bird.
Yeah.
That's what they call. So. So yeah, I still remember, getting to the Silver Bird and getting on the plane and Beauval and
Yeah.
Arles Cross, and then the PA, and then you get processed, in the PA correctional, the old correctional center, and then I get I get into the big dorm, or they kind of tried to keep people from Green Lake together, Beauval together, because of the rivalries up there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I all of a sudden I go to I go for supper, and my Green Lake buddies, cousins are all there, and they're saying, "What the hell are you doing here? You're
Yeah,
better than this."
yeah,
They because I had been high school, you know, honor student
yeah.
and whatever.
Athlete.
Yeah, and they didn't want me to be like them, sort of thing, which is good to them. But I ended up doing 37 days there. They had me. Green Lake won the basketball championship that year because I came in and
Oh
scored all
yeah.
the points.
Well, I'm
But
glad
I,
it was.
I got out 37. And the reality is, I told Mr. Goliath, Judge Goliath said, "I'm going to send you away for 4 months.
I was gonna
If you're
say that scared me. I'm like, that's not short. That 4 months to me, like 4 days is lots in jail, but 4 months, wow.
Yeah, 4 months." And she said, "And if you're still serious about university, you'll get out in plenty of time to go in the fall."
Yeah,
So I actually applied from the inside the walls,
yeah.
sent an application, and then I got out in 37 days on a work training program.
Nice.
So I was actually living in a house by the Bessborough Hotel, and my acceptance letter from U of S got sent to jail, and it was rerouted to where I was living, and I started school that fall.
Wow.
So I was 20 years old.
Well, that's a good story about the police officer helping
Oh
you,
yeah.
and
Eh,
that's good. So
eh,
I know you had some other non-indigenous people. I think there was maybe one from the meat shop, and then there was somebody at one of your teachers. Just tell us a little bit about those two stories.
Okay, yeah. Well, I had my grade six teacher in Green Lake, Mr. Thorsteinson, was also one that took me under his wing, recognized a little bit of, taught me how to curl and slide properly, and then in high school, I had a gym teacher by the name of Ron Dosdall. He's legendary around Meadow Lake,
Yeah.
the King of the North. He's passed away, and I spoke at his funeral actually about our love-hate relationship. But he was very very important to me, and basically told me. I mean, when I actually ended up in trouble and going to jail when I got out, I came back. I saw him. So he was a cross between Mother Teresa and Don Cherry. When I got out, I ran into him. Ran into him, and he said, "So, how was college?" So, and he told me the same thing. He said, "Okay, now that that's behind you, get your shit together."
Yeah.
And so I ended up speaking at his funeral about the influence that he had on my life, and he told me I could be anything I wanted to be. Um,
I remember that.
George, yeah, George McLeod was a high school teacher, a junior high teacher. He became a politician. Same thing. He used to feed me on Thursdays. Um, and fast forward, when I moved to Edmonton, I got a job at the Canada Packers.
Right.
There was a there was a fellow named John Rashinsky there. So I used to and I was working at the packing house, but also bouncing in the Skid Row bar. So I'd come in occasionally with a shiner, scraped knuckles, and he'd say, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I just got into a fight on the weekend. No,
Yeah.
no big deal." So we went for a beer at the Sands Hotel a few times after work, and one day he told me, "I watched you." He said, I was 22 years old. "I watched you. You don't have to work at this place the rest of your life like us, poor schmucks do.
Yeah.
You should go to university." I said, "Yeah, that's my plan eventually." And then he pointed at my beer and he said, "But you got to take it easy on that. You don't want to be another Ira Hayes." So I said, "Who's Ira Hayes?" And I didn't know that the song that Johnny Cash sings about the American war hero
Yeah.
who died. And so anyway, ultimately, John and I kind of kept in touch with each other for over 30 years. And when I got admitted to the bar, I invited him, and he sat in the front row, and I invited him to the reception. I didn't know he was terminally ill.
Hmm.
He didn't tell him. I knew he was sick, but I didn't know it was terminal. But 6 months later, he passed away, and his son-in-law was the head coach for the volleyball team for the Golden Bears. So, and he said that was one of the proudest moments of John's life. He always called you his Indian son because he
Right.
had three daughters. So
Okay.
he was important. Yeah. So
Well, those
anyway,
are, yeah, those are stories that need to be told. it's pretty cool how they seen something in you, and then
Yeah.
you followed through and you know did what you needed to do for yourself, and you made them proud too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a kind of a hit and miss thing. I mean, their teachings didn't click immediately, but I could say the twenties, and was kind of dark days for me. I was
Yeah,
working, going to university and working construction, bouncing in bars, meat plants. I didn't know, you know, I paid my own way. I got student loans, so I was on the right path, at least on the surface. And I see old people at church would say, "Oh, you're a role model." And I would look in the mirror and know I wasn't,
yeah,
because my other part of my life, I was in shambles, fighting in bars and stuff like that.
yeah. So you, like you said, you did go to school, and then you paid your own way. The journey to law school, I mean, that had to have been tough financially, and then yeah, the whole way. But you did it. Just tell us a little bit about that experience and how you
Well,
how you got
so
through that, Richard.
I went to university, and like I say, I went to U of A. I always tell my friends I was on the slow learners program because I was there for about 6 years. And I didn't have a degree,
Yeah,
because I get close to a degree and then I'd switch programs. So I was in
right. Yeah.
education, phys ed, arts, and then in '82, I think I went to the native law program in Saskatoon. I thought, well, I'll go to law school, and without a degree. So I went through that program in Saskatoon, and I got accepted at U of A law school. But I didn't feel like I belonged. Part of it was in my head, and my lifestyle was still somewhat the same. I still Now I was a waiter working in and server in restaurants, and late nights, go to school in the morning. So ultimately, I was asked to take a year off law school, and so I did, and I took about 12 years off. Actually, I didn't go back.
Hmm.
Um, but so I was telling that story on Thursday about full circle. That eventually I went back to law. I ended up getting really good jobs with the government, but I wasn't content. So I was married at that time with two small children, 2 and 4 years old, and uh, my now ex-wife said, "Why don't we move to Ottawa? You can go to law school that you've been whining about, and our two boys can, I have two sons from an earlier relationship that were living in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So off we moved to Ottawa. My twin sons were 13. My two youngest were 2 and 4. I worked, and then I got accepted to law school. And so for 3 years of law school, I worked full time um first of all, with the National Association of Friendship Centers, and then the last 2.5 years with Indian Affairs. But I was also a full time law student. But my mindset was different.
Yeah.
I knew I had to make it this time. The last time I didn't feel like I belonged, and it's so much of what you do in life is having confidence. So the second time around, I was like, hey, I'm just as good as these people in here. So ultimately, I graduated, and then we moved back to Alberta. I was going to be an academic. I started teaching at the university, but after about 5 years, I decided, well, this is not for me, and I hung my own shingle, and for the last 20 some years, I've been practicing by myself. So that's how it's just a crazy story, working full time. And I tell people I work full time and I ended law school full time. How did you do it? But I had picked up some tricks. uh,
Yeah.
I had a really good friend who took lots of good notes, and he's now a chief up in northern Ontario near Thunder Bay,
Yeah.
Chief Wilfred King. So, and a lot of support. I had another person who supported me very much is um, he's on the Ontario Court of Appeal. Geez, I can't think of his name right now, but he was another one that made sure I got through. I was trying to get you through. Both him and he was supported both Wilfred and I. So a lot of people have been responsible for where I am, not me alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really the only thing was um, the earlier stories about not giving up uh, stuck with me, and then a lot of people helped me. I wouldn't, I mean, I guess it's just that I'm just grateful, and just a lot of gratitude, and I've been blessed with the people that the Creator has put in front of me. Crucial times, um, people would somehow appear, and like a lady by the name of Patricia Montour, she had encouraged me to go back to law school, and I said I've been there, done that, and dropped out, got kicked out. He said, "Well, the time is right, and you'll know when it's right. You'll get the sign." She's passed away, but that's another lady that just said you need to go back, and the thing she told me as well is when you get finished, don't go work for the government. You work in the trenches with your skills, your background, helping people like you when you were younger. So that's
Mhm.
what I do. I'm in the trenches every day. So,
So I was on my original podcast, and one of the things that the purposes of this is to get some of the hard truths out there, and I talked about some of the hard truths with regards to what I see in the schools, and it's cross country. It was no different. I was just out in Katassu, and all of our kids are not in good shape, and you know how can you be in some of our communities, Big Island Lake, there 12, 1,500 people, and they were talking the leadership the other day on the news about domestic violence, alcohol abuse, the drugs, and then there was the murder out there. So with that happening in a community that size, how are the kids going to be doing good, right? So I see it. I think I think things are getting worse in a lot of ways. Some ways they're getting better. I don't want to be too negative, but that's what I see with our kids. Um, they're gone through a lot of trauma at home, and um, I see it when I talk to them in school with lack of confidence. So you've got a front row seat um, with the criminal justice system and Indigenous people. Can you tell us, just give us a take on what you've seen and your thoughts on that, things getting better, worse, and maybe yeah, talk about that because that's your specialty. That's you in there.
well, as I was saying off camera, there is so much. You're absolutely right. We're losing another generation of kids to hopelessness, homelessness, poverty, addictions, mental health issues, and I see it every day. As I said, you have a running screen outside most of the docket courtrooms in Edmonton. Um, 12 screens of accused, and 85% of them are Indigenous names. And it's the same thing. I spend a lot of time in the northeastern part of Alberta, which is close to Saskatchewan, and the communities that you're talking about, um, Bonnyville, St. Paul. St. Paul has 90% of the judge there is someone who has started in an Indigenous court. The reason is 90% of the people that come through the docket court every Thursday are Indigenous. So I remember in my university years in the late 70s, early 80s, reading an article. I took a criminology class. I read an article by a criminologist from UBC, Michael Jackson, not the musician, and he said in one of his excerpts that sticks out in my mind still to this day is he focused a lot on incarceration rates in the prairie provinces. He was talking in particular about Saskatchewan. If you're 16 in Saskatchewan, and this is in the early 80s,
Hmm.
you're more likely to be in jail than you are in high school. And I also talked earlier about the rite of passage in my communities where you turn 16 in those communities in the north, the silver bird come and took you away and
Hmm.
it became a cycle, in and out, in and out, in and out. That is still the cycle. That
Yeah.
is still the cycle. I still see that. I have so many repeat clients. So I have clients whose fathers I represent. Now I'm representing their sons in the last 20 years.
Eesh.
It's just including appearing on the docket on the same day, like they're in the bucket together,
Yeah.
and there's a 25-year gap in their age difference, but it's the same. I ask for a particular. I call the remand and ask for a particular name, and they say which one, young one or old one. So both.
Jeez. Yeah.
Both. I want both, but back, yeah. So it hasn't changed. It hasn't gotten any better. Addictions, mental health, homelessness, and I think it all stems back when people talk about colonialism and trauma, breaking the cycle. many families, many communities, they're still wrestling with that. And I'm not trying to paint the entire community that in that way, but it's just a lot of hopelessness and despair. And I think people don't impress upon their kids the importance of education and the importance of trying to get, trying to break the cycle. I spoke at the law school on Thursday and shared my experiences. And who followed me was my youngest son.
Yeah.
And he said, I like to talk after my dad because I want to highlight how his experiences have shaped me. I never had to experience anything like him because he broke the cycle of trauma. So I grew up middle class, you know, never wanted for money, that sort of thing. And I kind of, it was a natural for me to follow in his footsteps. But if it wasn't for him breaking the cycle, who knows where I'd be. So my son, it's always very touching when he says but there has to be a breaking of the cycle, and we're not there.
There's
And
not enough. There's not enough of it.
not enough supports, not enough, and large families, multi-generational trauma living in one home.
It's
You know
a,
what I mean?
I
Yeah.
didn't really know much about, nobody really talked about multi-generational trauma from the residential schools and stuff, but it is a real thing. It's still happening.
Mhm.
Even, yeah, even with little Georgie, she's, she's
Yeah.
experiences that too. So yeah, we both know, and I'm just going to close up on that where, um, I in Saskatchewan, there's so many incidents with First Nations, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it needs to be told that we're just numb to it. Every 2 weeks, there was another one I in Waterhen, suspicious
Yeah.
death yesterday. So I mean, it's just on, and people in the province are numb to it, and
Yeah.
with lots of work to do. But let's shift gears, and we're getting close to the end here. But one of the things, many things that we have in common is our we love physical fitness. You're in good shape. I'm trying to get in good shape too. My knee injuries hindered me a bit this fall, but you're a big advocate of physical fitness and the benefits. So let's touch base on that a little bit.
Well, I kind of grew into it naturally. I mean, I was like I say, athletic. I ran track. I had opportunities to go to track camp and some training. I had an uncle who had boxing gloves
Yeah.
in Green Lake. So he was always training, like for whatever reason. He passed away. He was a victim of a homicide outside of Big River when I was 16. It was very traumatic for me. He was my hero. But so fitness has always been kind of in the back. And then I moved to the city and I got involved in boxing. I did some boxing, amateur boxing. So of course I'm hanging around the gym training, and I'm in the university at the same time. I gravitated to the weight room, and I ran into some friends of mine who are still friends, who played football. So I was lifting weights with them and running. Um, then I ended up running road races, half marathons. Just it's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then through my darkest days in my 20s, I said to you,
Yep.
you know, they were probably my fittest days because that's how I coped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I coped with a lot of drinking and partying, but no matter how hungover I was, I'd be in the gym the next morning, licking my wounds, but out working out, and it became like an antidepressant for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I always like to quote a meme: um, "The best antidepressant is exercise, and it's free." So that's always been a part of my life. And then another one is work. A 1 hour workout is 4% of your day. So I keep that in the back of my mind. But the thing about it is, it really was just a natural thing for me to do. And then you go about self-esteem, feeling good about yourself. I think I said off the record that Ric Flair says if you look good, you feel good. So so that's kind of been my mantra. If you walk into a place where somebody's fit and walks in, you can tell right away, and that there's an air of confidence, and it gives me confidence. So I think it's important for our young. It's also health related, obviously, but it's important for our young people to keep fit. Keep. You don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger or a bodybuilder, but do something with your fitness. I think, and it's all part of being positive. So that's what I like to tell young people. I used to speak at schools occasionally with the lower schools,
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, and that's what I used to tell them. And, I mean, you look good, you feel good. Go, work out, go running, do this, do that. That's it's a big part of my life, and it still is. Every day, Saturday or Sunday is my heavy day.
Yeah.
Heavy is at my age, heavy is relative, but I'll be in the gym after this podcast and working out. So I do that every Saturday or Sunday,
Yeah. That.
and 3 or 4 days a week, I try to get something done. I used to run a lot of treadmill doing sprints. Now I just walk. So
I got a quick funny story about running. I actually talked with two of my old college teammates the other day, and I also talked to Jamal, and we're going to be getting him on here in a month or so. But anyways, we're going to plan a reunion down at Western, and we were talking about the last year, uh, the 12-minute run. So I
oh
wanted,
yeah,
yeah. So
I
I
was going to
want.
ask you about the 12-minute run.
Well, I
Yeah,
won it my second year. That's the year that I came in and kind of took charge and took that position on the team to be a regular player. And I sent a message in the dryland training. But the last year, so we had a goaltender by the name of Matt Barnesy, didn't drink. I mean, they would send us a workout program, and I knew it. So I mean, I would do my own thing. I knew I was going to pass a test. So we get there. Obviously one night's not going to make a difference. If you're going to make it or not. So me and I was talking to Jeff Brzezinski and Justin Cardwell. We're drinking beers, being college students the night before the run. And of course, Barnesy, he wouldn't, he was really, uh, he followed that thing to a T, right? So we go out for the 2 mile run, and he's ahead of me. And I just dug in the last lap. I said, I'm not letting Barnesy beat me. And I passed him on the last stretch. Oh, we
yeah.
laughed about that.
That's a rite of passage for all college athletes. I think is a 12-minute run. My son went through that. Took him about 3 or 4 tries before he passed Andrew, because he's a big guy. And then of course all of the football players I trained with at the university, lifted weights with. They always had to do the 12-minute run early in camp.
Oh
So,
God, like guys, some guys are just wired differently. But like, if you don't do it, they make you keep doing it, and it's six
yeah,
thirty in the morning every
yeah,
day till you do it. And yeah, we had guys go 5, 6 times, and I'm just
yeah.
going.
Andrew, it took Andrew about 4 or 5 times before.
And then we also brought up, I won't mention his name, but that was really hot that day when we did it. No, we were doing sprints after.
Yeah.
We did a 2 mile run in the morning, then we do the sprints in the afternoon. And one of our guys, he was a little out of shape. He keeled over. Ambulance had to come. Oh my God! So
Yeah.
fun times. But well, let's wrap up. Thank you for
Okay.
for everything. This was very good. One more thing. Um, if you, what would you say to a young Indigenous high school student that's stuck and maybe afraid of his future with after everything that you've seen and overcome? What advice would you give to him right now?
Um, I keep saying this all the time, and there's my grandma used to tell me "akamimo" in Cree. That means don't give up, or keep. I guess the way to translate it is keep on keeping on. Um, there was just making notes this
Yeah,
morning. Back in the day in downtown Edmonton, there was an underpass that you'd go under, and it was called the Rat Hole. It was downtown near where the arena is, where the Oilers play,
yeah,
and it would stretch for probably 75 meters, and it was narrow. It was totally pitch dark in there. But what I like to say is there's light at the end of the tunnel. So that's what I'd like to tell them, young people, get through the tough years. Sometimes I go see people in jail, and you say, the in the rural centers, and the guards say, "You want to talk them through the bars?" I said, "No, I want to go sit beside them."
yeah,
So they put me in jail, and I said, "Listen, Kamimo, don't give up. This is, and basically that's what I would tell any young person is, um, don't give up, don't despair. And it's inevitable they're going to have those thoughts, but push them out of your mind. It's like the positivity is something that you need to have in your mind, and because don't give up. If you give up in your mind, then you're done. So just no matter what adversity you face, just try and look up. And the other thing is look up. I flunked out of law school because I didn't think I belonged,
Hmm.
lacking confidence. And my mind shift changes to thinking, well, I'm here and I'm good as anybody in here. And I was, it was a breeze. And of course, my lifestyle had changed. But,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's interesting. You see, you brought up positivity quite a bit, and when I do my talk to the kids, and I'm talking about the 6 steps of success, you've seen it. I say, I said, listen, I said, the part about controlling everything you can control and
yeah,
having a positive attitude today, and I really accentuate this. I said, if you can learn to do that, you guys, it's going to be one of the most important skills. I'll quit pointing. It's going to be one of the most
like I
important
say,
skills.
the reason for many of my failures when I was younger is because I didn't believe in myself and I didn't believe I belonged. I wasn't good enough. The other thing I like, of course, is besides positivity is education. Without that, it's hard to get it today anywhere. And I don't mean you have to be a lawyer or a doctor but get a trade, get a skill so that you're not stuck in a rut where it's so easy to fall into a rut and it's easier to give up when you don't have a skill that you can fall back on.
Well, one
Yeah,
of the things I say to them as a First Nations person, I tell them now, I make sure I tell them every time. I said, listen, if you do not graduate high school, you are going to have a hard life. And I said, I'm telling you
100%.
that, and I mean it. So
Yeah,
that's, yeah, if they have to graduate.
yeah,
It's going to be a tough road. Well, you're a great example for Indigenous youth about the journey. And yeah, you went through your hardships, but end of the day, you made your grandmother proud and made a lot of people proud. And I'm proud of you. And thanks for coming on. And it was great to have. I'm glad we were able to tell this story, and I'm hoping some young people
yeah.
see this and can use you as an inspiration. All right, talk
Okay.
to you later. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Bye bye.
All right, bye.
Bye. Thanks.